Good afternoon. As Canadians from coast to coast to coast deal with the rising cost of living, from the cost of groceries to the cost of rent or your mortgage, they're feeling the pinch. At the same time, we're witnessing a government that has the hands of rich consultants deep in the pockets of the government. We've seen with ArriveCAN and the Phoenix pay system that rich consultants continuously go through the revolving door of Ottawa. What we're witnessing today and what we're witnessing from the Auditor General's report is a damning review of the long-standing practice and tradition of the government, consecutive governments, in ensuring that the public service doesn't have the tools it needs to actually get the job done. And at the time of an emergency when it's most needed, we see that we have rich consultants take advantage, direct advantage of not only procurement opportunities present to the government, but they directly interfere with the competitive processes that were engaged in 2022. It's not ending, it's getting worse, and Canadians are feeling the pinch. New Democrats know that the only solution moving forward is true accountability and ensuring we get to the bottom of these scandals. In addition to that, we know that we have to end this long-standing issue of the public service being completely gutted so that they can't do the work that Canadians expect them to do. In addition to this, it's a security issue. We've seen in the Auditor General's report that several times did GT Strategies conduct security reviews without themselves being under a security review. These are the risks present to government work. These are the risks present to our systems when we don't have the kind of public service that's trusted, that's accountable, and that's transparent to actually ensure that we end this long and ongoing crisis that is the shadow public service. Our rich consultants continue to take advantage of the government and Canadians. First.
Well, it's been 4 months since the atrocious terrorist attack on October 7th and since the war has begun in Gaza. And I have to say that the Prime Minister's statement yesterday, the very, very watered-down statement that barely called for a ceasefire and actually does nothing to help the people of Gaza, the people of Rafah, who are right now being bombed, is so disappointing. And then to see that the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs actually come out and say how wrong his government is, how wrong the Liberals have been to cut funding to UNRWA, to stop, to not call for a ceasefire, to continue to sell arms to Israel, a state that could be committing genocide against the Palestinian people, is appalling. If Mr. Oliphant, who has answered me multiple times in the House, multiple times in committee, if he actually believes that UNRWA should have their funding restored, that we should stop selling weapons to Israel, and that we should call for an immediate ceasefire, do everything we can, he should be brave enough to say it publicly, the way New Democrats have been saying it since October 11th.
D'abord, j'aimerais mentionner de la part de toutes les néo-démocrates, nos sympathies sont avec les victimes des actes violents qu'on vient juste d'entendre dans la ville de Vaudreuil, au Québec. Pour l'instant, il semble qu'il n'y ait pas de confirmation des personnes mortes, mais il y a plusieurs personnes qui sont blessées. On espère bien qu'ils ont un bon rétablissement qui est très vite, et on espère aussi que nos cœurs sont avec les familles des victimes. We wanted to underscore the tragic number of victims that we've just heard about in Vaudreuil, Solange, in Quebec. Certainly, for the moment, there does not appear to be any confirmed deaths, and that is something for which we are very grateful. But our hearts are with the victims and with their families at this very, very difficult time. Alors, pour la question de ArriveCAN, l'MPD a toujours prôné qu'il faut respecter les règles, puis il faut toujours aussi faire des investissements qu'on a une fonction publique qui peut bien fonctionner. On a des règles en place, et on voit avec le rapport de la vérificatrice générale que le gouvernement n'a pas respecté des règles qui devraient nécessairement suivre des achats gouvernementaux. l'appel à l'offre, de s'assurer qu'il y a une bonne valeur pour ces contrats-là. Toutes ces choses-là ont été bafouées. Alors, les néo-démocrates demandent encore une fois au gouvernement de mettre en place des investissements pour une fonction publique qui peut faire leur travail, et on demande aux libéraux, comme on a demandé au gouvernement conservateur avant, qu'il faut respecter les règles qui sont déjà mises en place pour éviter qu'est-ce qui est une catastrophe, 60 millions de dollars, et toutes les retombées, bien sûr, de ce contrat qui a été donné sans appel d'offres et une mauvaise gestion qui a été décriée par le vérificatrice général. Aussi, et dernièrement, il faut prendre en considération qu'est-ce qu'on vient d'entendre du secrétaire parlementaire au ministre des Affaires étrangères, pour Rob Oliphant de questionner même son avenir au sein du gouvernement, démontre jusqu'à quel point les libéraux sont divisés. L'MPD a été très clair, et Heather McPherson vient de le dire très bien, qu'effectivement, depuis le 11 octobre, l'MPD a demandé un cessez-le-feu. On croit que l'aide humanitaire est absolument essentielle et que pour le gouvernement de couper les denrées d'UNRWA, c'est quelque chose qui est irresponsable dans une situation où il y a tellement de gens qui n'ont même pas accès à la nourriture, accès aux médicaments, accès à toutes les choses nécessaires pour maintenir la vie, y compris les enfants. Alors, on demande encore une fois, étant donné les divisions au sein du gouvernement libéral qui agit, on a déjà tracer le portrait de comment il devrait agir. On croit sincèrement que le gouvernement devait commencer d'agir dans l'intérêt des civils à Gaza. Et on est ouvert maintenant à vos questions. Are there questions?
Est-ce que vous pensez que M. Oliphant peut rester comme secrétaire parlementaire de la ministre Joly?
Je trouve que, étant donné qu'est-ce qui est sorti dans les médias, le fait qu'il n'est pas en accord avec les actions gouvernementales, ça va de soi. Pour être fidèle à lui-même et qu'est-ce qu'il a dit à son concitoyen, comment il pourrait continuer d'être le porte-parole, comme Heather McPherson vient de dire, le porte-parole qui répond à nos questions et en même temps être d'accord avec ce que l'MPD propose. Il me semble qu'il y a vraiment une contradiction énorme en qu'est-ce qu'il croit et qu'est-ce qu'il dit en Chambre. Et il devrait prendre ses propres conclusions. I'll let, should he resign?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I have to say that he is the only one saying the right things, albeit privately, albeit not brave enough to say it publicly. But I don't understand how this government can listen, can have people within their own caucus that are calling for us to adhere to international law, to adhere to the rules of humanitarian law, and the government's not listening. And Mr. Oliphant has some big explaining to do about why he can stand in committee and why he can stand in the House and give information that he does not believe, if in fact what he said privately was actually what he thought. I mean, it feels very much to me like a very liberal thing to say one thing publicly and to say a different thing privately.
Why do you think the Liberals are so divided on this issue?
I don't understand. To be perfectly honest, we have standards for international law. And if we adhered those standards of international law, then there is no challenge. Then we apply it equally. We apply it when it happens in Ukraine. We apply it when it happens in Sudan. We apply it when it happens in Israel and Palestine. And that is the line that every country in the world should use. And if you don't think the countries around the world are watching how Canada is applying law differently in different contexts, and that won't have deep implications on our reputation as a country, and deep implications on our trade relationships, on our ability to do diplomacy, to work at the United Nations and in other multilateral fora, you're mistaken. That is hugely impactful.
Well, let's get back on the New Democrats for a moment. You said that he should stand, by what he truly believes. Well, you have an arrangement which is keeping the government in power. UNICEF says there could be another 10,000 children dying in the next few weeks just of hunger. At what point would this support for maintaining UNRWA unfunded become an issue that might cause you to stop supporting the government?
I know our leader has been very clear and has been very strong with the Prime Minister. At some point, We all need to be able to say that we did everything we could to stop what is a potential genocide. And I have to be very clear. What is happening right now in Gaza is not making life safer or better for Israelis or Palestinians. This is not leading to a safe and secure resolution for anyone. So I do know that our leader has brought this up with the Prime Minister and will continue to bring this up with the Prime Minister. We can't watch people die, and innocent people, innocent children die, and stand back and do nothing.
Do you think Canada's doing enough to get people, to pressure the governments of Israel and Egypt to get families of Canadians out of Gaza?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, realistically, we don't have the diplomatic relationships that we need to have with all sorts of countries in the region to be able to make that happen. But right now we have Canadians who cannot get out of Gaza. We have Canadians who have been contacting us. You know, even the system that was in place for immigration where folks were supposed to be able to get a number and be able to apply, that system is broken. Folks are calling my office every day saying they can't even get a number to get out. And at a time when folks who have been told to go to Rafah because it is safe are now being bombed in Rafah, when we are seeing innocent children in the tens of thousands lose their lives, this can't be something where we do it on the side of our desk. This needs to be all hands on deck, and that's not what we're seeing by the immigration minister either.
What does it say that Mr. Oliphant is not saying this publicly? He's only able to say this privately. What does that say about how things are with the Liberals?
It's peak Liberal, isn't it? I mean, realistically, they don't seem to understand that the Canadians expect them to take a stand, to have hard decisions, be leaders, play a leadership role. And that's not what they're doing. They're trying to be on both sides of the issue, but children are dying. There is a potential genocide. Canada is potentially complicit in a genocide. And so we need to be very clear where we stand on this. It has to be with international law. It has to be supporting the ICJ investigation, stopping selling arms to Israel, making sure Canadians can get out, making sure UNRWA, the only organization that can provide support to Palestinians, is funded, and making sure that all of those that should be held responsible for this that's done.
Est-ce qu'on peut avoir juste une dernière question en français par rapport à, vous parliez des libéraux qui sont divisés, mais est-ce que ça ne représente pas la population canadienne qui est elle aussi divisée?
Moi, je pense qu'il y a une contradiction entre qu'est-ce qu'ils disent publiquement et qu'est-ce que, bien sûr, des députés libéraux croient. Alors, cette contradiction-là est évidente. À mon avis, si on demande aux Canadiennes et Canadiens s'ils veulent continuer à voir le tuerie des enfants qui se passe présentement à Gaza, ils vont dire qu'il faut que le Canada fasse tout en son pouvoir pour mettre fin à ces bombardements et mettre fin à la mort des civils. Merci. Merci.
Yesterday, if you don't mind. But I was just wondering your reaction to getting support from all the parties except for the Conservatives, and if you could talk about why you brought the bill.
I brought the bill forward because this is something that we have been fighting for now for decades. I'm sorry, Nina. I'll just take this one and then I'll head off. Bill 273 is something that is reflective of the Call to Action 6, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. For 8 years now, we have waited for implementation of this. There has not been a single call to action from Truth and Reconciliation put in place since 2022. And I think that was one of the impetus behind what was a significant majority of 2/3 of Parliament voting in favor of moving my bill to the next level, the second reading, moving it to committee. Over 60 countries worldwide have actually banned the practice of physical punishment of children. And Canada continues to maintain in its criminal code something that dates back to 1892 that is a provision that allows for the physical punishment of children. Residential schools, I think, indicated how horribly wrong that was to continue to maintain that in the criminal code. And I think parliamentarians reflected where Canadians are at by voting overwhelmingly to move it to committee yesterday. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
What do you think of Mr. Oliphant's comments to the CBC? Mr. Oliphant was, unbeknownst to him, taped by a constituent, and he was expressing views of...
See, first of all, I think it's not ethical to record without someone's consent. And I always say what I believe in and what I say to my constituents, I say it here.
But do you think he should stay on, given that he disagrees with most
That
of your
will be
government
his. That
policies?
will be his prerogative. That is his decision to be made. I cannot comment on that. That will totally be his decision.
But what's the point that you're making? What's the point that you're making that you say publicly what you say privately, and that others are not?
Well, see, the thing is that, like, you know my position on this issue, and I've been saying it since, like, this crisis started, and I will always stand up for those values on which I believe, and I will always be the voice of my constituents here in Ottawa.
Do you think that the government has a problem, though, in trying to walk both sides of this issue and not being clear on what its policies are? And is that compounded by Mr. Oliphant saying privately what he doesn't say publicly?
I won't comment on, like, why he has said that, like, privately. And the thing is that, like, as you know, that, like, Liberal Party has, like, MPs from different communities. It's like a big party from diverse, and that's what the Liberal Party reflects, the diversity of this country. We come from diverse regions. We talk about our issues, which are important, and we have been having these difficult discussions in our caucus. Like, we have been having these difficult. I know different people have a different perspective, and it's important to be the voice of your constituents here. So, like, in Liberal Party, we bring perspective from different parts of the world. And that's the beauty about Canada. And I think these are the conversations many Canadians have been having since this crisis has started.
I just got to ask you, from the pure political side of things, do you think the Prime Minister and Ms. Jolie should keep him on as the parliamentary?
That will be their decision. That's the decision to be made by them. Thank you.
Can we get an update on the status of the pharmacare talks? How would you sort of describe how things are going?
Well, we're in the late stages. We've reduced the issues down to a handful. And, you know, we're in constant contact. And, you know, I'm optimistic.
Should we take from the Valentine's date between Mr. LeBlanc and Mr. Blakey that things are looking better than they were 2 weeks ago?
I didn't see the romance.
They posted about a pizza dinner date last
did
night,
they?
and
Yeah.
given that they're the chairs of the joint committee, I thought maybe that was reading between the tea leaves.
The only relationship I'm interested in is with Minister Holland at this point.
And you said it's down to the final things. What are those things?
Well, I don't want to, you know, bargain in public, but I've said before, what's important to us is that we get a single-payer model established and that we see real progress. You know, I've said I don't want any person with diabetes in this country to go without their insulin or their products. And I don't want any young woman to not be able to get contraception, as examples. And so starting with classes of drugs and getting that paid through the single-payer system, I think would be really exciting, and it would be historic.
And are you pushing for more classes beyond diabetes and contraceptives?
We're the NDP. We're the NDP. We push for a full system.
But
you know.
You drew a line in the sand on single payer. I wonder if there's
Yes.
a line in the sand on the number of classes of drugs as well.
Well, you know, from the beginning, we've always said that we accept an incremental approach. Even the CASA speaks of starting with essential medicines. So we realize that you can't go to full pharmacare right away. Our CASA doesn't even contemplate that.
So 2 might be enough.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. We're in bargaining right now.
Okay.
You
And
know.
when you said earlier that you're optimistic of reaching a deal, what's changed that now makes you optimistic compared to sort of the less than optimistic tone we've heard from your leader?
Well, I guess the progress we're making in negotiations. You know, Minister Holland and I have a good relationship. We're working well together. We have come to agreement on a lot, and I know what's outstanding. And the things that are outstanding to me are not unbreachable issues. I think we have there's a reasonable prospect that we can come to an agreement on them. And so we made a lot of progress, and we're in the last few rounds.
And what has been agreed on then?
Well, I can't say. I can't.
Plan B part of things. You know,
Plan B?
Plan B, the emergency over-the-counter, if there's an incident where you try not to get pregnant, it costs about $35–40.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to discuss individual drugs at this point or anything, but I can tell you that, you know, what we've been pursuing is is class coverage. So, you know, the full gamut of drugs under a certain class of drugs so that people can get the drugs that their physicians need prescribed for them.
And I've been asking almost every conservative who's walked by here today if they would support that kind of drug coverage for contraceptives, and no one's commented. What do you make of that?
The Conservatives have been completely opposed to single-payer pharmacare. They're opposed to the public expansion of our public system. That's clear. They voted against it every time it's come in the House. And I think that's frankly deplorable. You know, I mean, what the NDP is trying to do is make sure that every Canadian can get the drugs, their medication that their doctors or nurse practitioners or pharmacists prescribe for them without regard to the ability to pay. Isn't that part of our public health care system?
What if we can't afford it, though?
We can't afford it. Over and over again, pharmacare saves us money. You know,
I mean, it saves individuals money, but the government would end up paying more.
It saves the system money.
Right. But right now, the system's being paid for largely by private insurance.
When you look, if a system costs you $40 billion, and I can tell you by rearranging, we can cost us $35 billion. That's a good thing.
But that would lead to raising taxes,
no,
right?
It does not. How you allocate those savings is a matter of policy that's yet to be determined. But it's better for a country to spend $35 billion on medication than $40 billion, and cover everybody. That's smart economics. That's smart health. How you allocate the savings? Look, pharmacare is not free. Pharmaceuticals aren't free. Someone has to pay for them. So we realize that. But by reorganizing the system, getting savings from bulk buying, from streamlined administration, from cost-related non-adherence, and taking those savings in the system, and then distributing those savings among everybody means you cover everybody and you spend less on average. So it's smart economics.
But how do you create a whole new program, a whole new healthcare system without raising taxes?
Well, you don't. Look, right, if you transfer who's paying for medication now, who's paying for it now?
It's companies and individuals.
That's right. If you transfer who's paying now onto a single-payer system, then those expenses get transferred to the single-payer system.
Right.
It's not a windfall for those
single payer needs to pay that.
Well, so instead of sending a premium to Manulife, you send a pharmacare levy to the federal government, and it's less. Would you rather pay less?
So there would be some sort of copay or...
In theory, yes.
Premium.
There's all sorts of different models for that. I mean, if you read the Hoskins report, he explores a number of different ways you could do that. What I'm saying is that it's not intended to be a windfall for those that pay now. Canadians are going to have to pay for the pharmaceuticals. But what I'm saying is by rearranging it into the single-payer system, they'll pay less. And that's why it's a smart economic model. But those questions have not been figured out yet. But I'm just saying, theoretically, when you pay less on pharmaceuticals and cover everybody, that's a smart healthcare development. And you know, I started off thinking this is just a primary healthcare issue, which it is. I'm now convinced it's also a fundamental economic issue. Pharmaceutical drugs are the single fastest rising issue in our healthcare system. We spend more money on pharmaceuticals now than on doctors, and they're wildly out of control. If we don't reorganize our system, where are we going to be in 10 years? Where are we going to be in 20 years? So you asked about the Conservatives. The NDP has a plan based on 7 different studies and parliamentary budget studies that say by rearranging in single payer, we'll save money. What's the Conservative plan? The status quo? That's no answer at all.
Okay. Is the contraceptive bid a bid to wedge the Conservatives on this issue?
I'm not interested in wedge politics. I'm interested in helping people get access to the medication they need. It's not the politics of it. We're trying to get classes of drugs for people that don't have them now. So
thank you for stopping. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mika.
Thanks.
Take care.
Your proposal to not have a advertising for fossil fuel companies seems to be popping up in the NDP Alberta leadership race. Any thoughts about that?
I think it's a really good conversation. I mean, we really need to talk about corporate accountability. We need to talk about the massive amount of pollution that's happening. We need to talk about where we're going to go in a climate crisis. So I think it's a good conversation, and I mean, it's what we do as New Democrats. We debate things fiercely. So I'm glad I opened that door, and now we'll have that conversation.
Do you think it's part of a wedge that's driving the Alberta provincial party away from the federal party, or?
Well, anybody who's ever gone to NDP convention knows we get pretty passionate about issues, but this is the party formed on the prairies. It gave us national Medicare, it gave us pensions, it gave us national housing programs. I'm really sure that Charlie Angus's bill to have corporate accountability in advertising is not going to create any kind of crisis. It's a good debate.
Good. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.